Do you sometimes fantasize about being a rolling billiard ball of doom? Then you've come to the right place. This is my review of the Blight. Welcome to the next chapter of my ongoing love letter to Dead by Daylight. And now we have the Blight, our dear friend, bouncing around, having a good time. We're going to go over his perks, his power, his add-ons, and then a quick general overview to see where he fits or does not in this game. Where is he strong? Where is he weak? And why should you play him? So let's get into it. First perk off the bat is Dragon's Grip. After kicking a generator for the next 30 seconds, the first survivor that interacts with it will scream, revealing their location for 4 seconds and becoming afflicted with the exposed status for 60 seconds. Dragon's Grip has a cooldown of 120 seconds. I'm not sure if that exists at rank 3, but we could take a look. This is actually an interesting skill. Like, there's a lot of times where you are... like you're chasing someone, right? Like you come and you need to kick that gen. Like maybe you have pop, maybe you have something else, and you're running around. All the survivor has to do is tap that gen. Just tap it to stop the regression that it took you time to actually, go through the animation and kick the gen, right? They could just run by and tap it. What this does, if you're in a situation like that, or in a couple other situations, if after you kick a gen, someone touches it, they are going to be exposed for 60 seconds, and you are going to get a 4-second notification of where they are and what they're doing. Like, this can lead to downs. Like, it's honestly, if you're doing a lot of kicking of generators, like if you are, running pop or something else along those lines to where you have a need and where you are going to be kicking gens on a regular basis, this is not a bad perk. Is this a meta breaker or anything like that? No, but it's solid. Like, you can actually get some use out of this, especially in those times where you're kicking a gen and you're kind of in between, sort of in a chase, but not so much, where you're going to come around and they're going to run around the other side and they're going to tap it real quick to stop the regression, and all of a sudden they're exposed for 60 seconds and are probably going to pay for that. So is this the best perk in the world? No, but is this a usable perk? I think so. I think that you can actually work this into a lot of different lineups, especially if you know you're going to be kicking a lot of generators. If you're just running like Rune Undying or something like that, you may not get as much use out of this as you would like, since you won't be kicking gens until Rune and Undying are down. But if you are running something a little more pop based, or things along that nature where you're going to be kicking some gens from time to time, Dragon's Grip is not bad. Honestly, I think you can surprise some people with this and get some quick downs, and that's going to help you a lot in the long run. So moving on to the next one. Hex, a Blood Favor. Okay, so this recently just is going to get a buff. This is coming up with the mid-chapter patch to improve this perk, but we'll read it anyway. A hex that gains the entity's favor when blood is spilled. When a survivor is hit with a basic attack, pallets within 16 meters of the location are held in place by the entity for 15 seconds. These pallets cannot be pulled down. Hex Blood Favor has a cooldown of 60 seconds. So, honestly, like on paper, this is not a terrible perk, and it's going to be better when you actually when it gets buffed. Like if you hit someone like right before or within this area, which is 16 meters, I think that's actually getting buffed as well. You are going to stop any pallet from being pulled down. And if you have played Killer longer than a day, you will understand how many times where you have gotten yay close to knocking someone down for that final time, and they have gotten away or extended the chase even longer because something as simple as a pallet was in the way, and they are everywhere. So if this was just a straight perk, this would be amazing. One of the major buffs that they're giving to it is not only are they going to allow basic attacks to trigger this perk, but they are also going to allow special attacks. So that means, you know, Hunter's throwing a hatch. If you're the Blight, per se, and you are doing a rush, that counts as a special attack. A Nurse Blink Strike, you know, like things like that. Things that are tied to your power in that manner. The only problem that I have with this perk, especially now with the advent on the horizon of boon totems, is that it is a hex perk. Hex perks in this game are such a gamble, such an absolute positive gamble. They might last the entire game. They might not last 45 seconds into the game because they spawned by a gen, or someone was just on their way casually walking to another objective and they saw it and they cleansed it. It's always been the problem with totems. It's always kind of like, do I run it? Do I not run it? And it's tough. So this will not, once it's buffed, it will not be a bad power. It's not a terrible power as it is, but the problem is that it just links straight to the basic attack, which sort of limits it and made it less attractive. Like, this might not be a bad perk to run at the end of the day, but people won't necessarily, if this is all you're running, people won't necessarily look for it. I mean, if you're running Ruin Undying or something, like, you don't want to get a third, you don't want a third hex perk, right? But if you are running other things and people don't really notice this outside of your increased pressure at many different pallets, if you're able to hit them and block that pallet from being pulled down, you're gonna freak people out. Like, it's not a bad perk, but the problem is it is attached to a hex totem, so it can be easily banished. That's how Dead by Daylight balances their games. It's a decently strong perk, but then it has to have that counterplay. Like, it has to be able to be cleansed. And then if it's cleansed, then, you know, you're down to 3 perks, or you're down to 2 perks if you used Corrupt and Redemption, or you're down to whatever if you used Ruin and Undying on top of that. So, not a bad perk. I think it's worth playing around with, especially after the changes come around to where a special attack will also trigger the same thing. But otherwise, it could be worse. Like, it could be worse. And then we come to Hex Undying. There's a lot to talk about Hex Undying. It's a very, very interesting perk. Honestly, probably one of the best in the last 10 killers that have been released. And let's just get into it. While Hex Undying is active, survivors within 2 meters of any dull totem have their aura revealed. That's kind of nice. So if someone is cleansing a doll, you're going to see them light up. You know, it gives you information, not a ton, but once in a while you're going to see it. Is that going to help you? Are you going to get an immediate down out of that? No, but you do know that one person is there, and maybe they're close, maybe they're not, but you know that one person is there. You might have one person on a hook. That leaves 2 people that are still on the field of play. Maybe they're on a gen, maybe they're coming in for the save, whatever. There's a lot of times where information is just king in Dead by Daylight, and being able to get an idea of where someone might be, it doesn't hurt. It's not the worst thing, but that's not the real, like, juice of this perk. When another hex totem is cleansed, that totem's hex transfers to the Hex Undying totem, deactivating Hex Undying. Any tokens that transfer hex are transferred as well. So if you had, let's say, like 3 stacks of Devour Hope and someone found your totem, you're going to get a second chance. So this basically is a second chance at whatever hex totem that you are running. And that's super, super nice. It used to be much stronger. It used to just keep jumping. There's a total of 5 totems in any game, and it just keeps jumping and jumping until it would run out of totems, right? Well, that got nerfed because that was very, very hard for people who are newer at the game to find all those totems, and that's understandable. Like, I get that. The problem is it's barely enough at higher levels. I know that Rune Undying is sort of the meta, even after the nerfs, just because getting that second chance on that totem gives survivors a secondary objective that they know they're going to have to get rid of. They don't have to care about Ruin for probably the first 3 gens, but it's the last 2 gens that they need to get done that are going to be problematic. Like, especially the first 2 gens. Like that 3rd gen is, you know, if you got map pressure, you're chasing people off stuff, you know, you're going to get decent regression. And paired with Ruin gives you 200% regression on generators automatically without kicking. It has always been a very strong perk, and it always will be a decent perk. The problem is it has to last. If it only lasts the first 30 seconds of the game, not only are you out of perk slot, but yeah, I mean, you wasted a perk and you're down to 3, and maybe you were hoping for a little stall out of Ruin, and so that's why people take up 2 perk slots and run Rune and Undying, because it gives you a second chance for your perk. And a lot of times that can make the difference. But also, many games I play go through and people are running the new small game, people bring maps, and those totems are gone in no time. Honestly, you might see a minute and a half, 2 minutes of it before they are gone, especially depending on the spawns. Like, it feels bad that after 5 years, they can't figure out to not put a lit hex totem directly across from a generator, and it happens all the time. Like, you know, it should be simple coding, but sometimes they have to shut down maps because they're having like rune totems, well, they're having totems in general spawn in places where they are unable to be hit. So I mean, you could make an entire, like, you know, hour-long video on Ruin and Hex Totems and Undying thrown into the mix, but Undying is very useful. Like I said, if you are running like Devour Hope or something like that, someone finds it and you're at 3. You're at 3 stacks Devour Hope, you are knocking people down with 1 hit, and they're like, people are scattering, people are all over the place, and someone finds your Devour Hope totem and cleanses it. Boom, it transfers over to the Undying and Undying totem, and you still get to keep your stacks. It was bugged back in the day. You lost your stacks, and this was before the changes to it, when it could jump to all the dull totems that were on the map. But nonetheless, playing with hex totems is a gamble. Honestly, like, very good survivors know the spawn places of all the hex totems on the map. They've been on those maps dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of times, and some maps are harder to find them, absolutely. But you'll find that you'll wish that there was a better way to get a little bit of slowdown in the game than Rune and Undying, because a lot of times it just feels bad. But it is a very, very strong perk. It has become very, very meta just for the fact that it does give that second chance to whatever perk you're running, and you're either going to probably run on one with Ruin, or you're probably going to want to run it with Devour Hope. It gives a little flexibility. If you are getting a good Devour Hope game running, and all of a sudden someone knocks out your totem at 3 stacks when you're just about to, like, you know, just giggle in joy at the beauty of Devour Hope, because it's a fantastic perk. You have to work for it, and when it pays off nicely. But if it gets cleansed, then boom, you got to back up. So the other one's not so much, you know, Huntress Calling. Like, I don't know, there's a lot of perks that I wouldn't run with it. Maybe, oh no, not Huntress's Calling, Huntress's Lullaby, excuse me. I am elderly. But things where you're going to either, you want Rune up and you want to keep it up until mid to late game, Undying is the key. And even then, it might not save you. Same thing with Devour Hope, Undying is going to be the key. And Huntress's Lullaby, like, I think, is a decent one too, although that really depends on the build. It's not as strong a perk, but it can be fun, especially if you mix a lot of things in there as well. Like with a Doctor, that could be a strong perk, and, you know, like, no sound skill checks, and, you know, weird Doctor skill checks and things like that, and you know, toss some overcharge on there. You also get some additional regression. That's another perk for another day, but it gives you an idea of what that brings to the table, especially since hex perks, even in the state that they have always been in, are such an important part of killer gameplay. They're a gamble. Use them or don't, but if you use them, make sure you get Undying to back them up. But let's move on to the power. Pustulus Serum courses through his veins, corrupting his mind and body, yet granting him unnatural physical abilities. Special ability, Rush. Press the power button to quickly rush forward. Doing so consumes a rush token. While performing rush, the Blight cannot launch an attack. Rush into a wall or obstacle in the environment to slam into it. If the rush fails to connect with a wall or obstacle, or if the Blight is out of rush tokens, he will enter a short fatigue state and begin recharging the tokens. Special attack, Lethal Rush. Following a slam, press the power button to launch a Lethal Rush. Doing so consumes a rush token. A Lethal Rush behaves the same as Rush, except for the Blight may launch an attack by pressing the attack button. So basically, this is your power. You are a ping pong ball of doom, and it has they've worked on improving it a little bit. They also helped improve his. He used to have a point of view that was much lower to the ground, which made it a little kind of like hard to keep track of things. You know, you were like tiny like Victor, but you weren't, right? Or you were like Hag level and you weren't. And it made moving at those higher speeds kind of tough sometimes, and they helped adjust that and made him feel a little better as well. But what this allows you to do is it allows you to bounce around the map. You get five rush tokens, and you are able to bounce off stuff. And I won't say bounce off anything, because even to there are places where you've got open areas. There's places where you have things that you can't quite bounce off of. You just kind of try and play with it. If anything, Blight is someone you're going to have to practice, and because it is very disconcerting. But what it does give him is it gives him excellent map pressure. He can get around the map very, very fast, and that's what makes the Blight a very strong killer. He can also, in particular situations, use his power to catch up and take somebody off guard as they're running away. And kind of come out, not necessarily out of nowhere, but catch up very fast to where the survivor doesn't have a ton of time to adjust. Problems, once you start playing good survivors, and depending on the add-ons that you're using, and whether or not you are able to use the flick or not, which is really hard to replicate, and honestly it's kind of a pain. And I also, it's not intended. So I don't worry too much about it. I mean, I've tried, but once in a while it works, once in a while it does not. It's not. But a survivor who is running straight, and you have bounced and bounced and bounced, and now you're bearing down on them with your intense Blight speed. So you don't have a lot of like lateral movement. It's probably about a 45-degree cone. I think that's all you get, but you can kind of a little bit at the end. Like you can turn a little bit with it and get a little more of a flick, but there is something that you can do with your mouse and swing it around the screen to get a very large flick. It's sort of like the Oni, where he's running around with his Bam Bam stick and he's flying through, and sometimes just turning left or faking a left and going right is enough for him to miss that power. It's the same thing with the Blight, and it's tricky. Like you can, it's not really great in loops, or in closed wall scenarios. Like you've got a TL, or you've got whatever. Even the shack. Once in a while, there's something neat that you can do there, but not all that often, because you've got a lot of room to move or work with it. But mostly it is when people are out of position and then used strictly for map pressure from point A to point B, from generator to generator. You're going to be able to push a lot of people off stuff, and if you're running something like Rune and Undying, that's going to give you regression, and it's going to help extend the game slightly, depending on how well you do it. So he's got great map pressure. His power allows him to catch up to survivors very quickly, and if they are out of position and you are able to bounce correctly and play a little billiards with him, you can get some nice downs, and but you also will miss. You'll miss a bunch, because against good survivors, it's very easy to be able to just turn left, turn right, and that always feels bad. Like I've got this big fancy power that I have to take the time to learn and understand maps and where to bounce and how to bounce, and when is it good to use this power, when is it not so good to use this power, and sometimes it's countered as simply as just turning right. But right now, Blight is one of the, probably right now most people refer to the nurse, the spirit, and the Blight as kind of the 3 top killers in the game. When Blight came out, you know what, there were some people that were like, hey, yeah, you know what, Blight's pretty good, and then they played well with him, and you practice him, and you put the time in, and you can really get a feel for it, and he really can really take advantage of what just plain map pressure will do, chasing people off gens and starting chases, and once in a while having a real good option to chase someone down very quickly and get them down, get them on a hook, and then scream across the map again. Like, that's very, very, it's a big deal. Like, it's not unlike Billy being able to fly around with his chainsaw and get from place to place to place, except for here, instead of just going in a kind of a straight line and moving in between obstacles like you would with Billy, as the Blight, you want to be bouncing back and forth off of obstacles to get to your destination. And so it's a fun, once again, this was another really, really interesting killer that they made and did something very different than what we had done before, and it's worked out well, especially with some adjustments that they made to his kit and to his point of view, and then tried to smooth out. There's a lot of times where you would miss bounces that you shouldn't have. You would just slide along the wall. And they've cleared up a bunch of that. I'm not saying all of it is gone. There's a lot of times where you feel you should have bounced off something and you just keep sliding and running on by, and that always feels tough. But regardless, Blight definitely one of the top killers in the game once you get your paws on him, and I definitely suggest, if you haven't, go through the frustration, practice a bunch of games, and get better, because Blight is very much well worth playing. We're gonna move on down to add-ons, and then we're going to scoot into our sort of 1,000-foot overview of where the Blight sits in the game currently, and whether or not you should pick them up. And welcome back. Thanks for hanging. Now we're going to go through the add-ons and just real quick give you an idea what they do. Once again, we're going to run into the same pattern that Dead by Daylight generally goes with. You're slightly, moderately, considerably, but we're going to hit the highlights first and foremost, and then go from there. We're going to work from ultra rare going on down. So Compound 33, Talbot's penultimate attempt at a serum. Though it did not facilitate his escape, it did have powerful side effects. Any survivor within 16 meters of a slam will suffer from the hindered status effect for 3 seconds. Slamming pallets or breakable walls will destroy them and stun the Blight for 1.5 seconds. So you get a little bit bit of a downside and a little bit of upside. I really wish they could just stop that. Just give us good stuff that, helps out the power, which is why we would want to run the add-on. Don't give us a downside. Not that that's the worst one in the world, and not that you were always going to be slamming pallets and breaking them, but one of the nice things with his rush is that you can. If you have, you can't just, from a dead stop, use your power, run into the pallet, and then break it. You do have to bounce once before you are able to do it. You always have to bounce once before you can swing or attack. And that goes the same for breakable walls and pallets. But this just gives you a little extra 1.5 second stun. And it slows down the survivors for a little bit. That's not bad. There are worse things. 16 meters is decent. It doesn't have to be a full terror radius. That would be way too much. But not bad. Worth using for a little extra slow on the survivors. But other than that, nothing fancy. Glass-like laboratory tag, molded from the fog itself. Either a gift from the entity or just a cruel just to tag the Blight as he once did to others. Upon using all rush tokens, your last lethal rush will put survivors into the dying state. So this is kind of an interesting one. Tricky to use though. What you do have to do is you have to bounce 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. You have to be on your last token. And on that last token, if you hit someone during your lethal rush, you will insta-down them if they are in the full health state. If they're not in the full health state, don't bother trying to use up all 5 rushes. Is this a good ultra rare? It's fine, but once again, it has a very, very particular activation condition. You need to be on your 5th and final rush for this to work. And I'm not saying that you're not going to get a couple downs here and there with that, but it's not going to carry your game. Like most of your hits are probably not going to be on the last rush. So is that good? I mean, I think you'll get some clip-worthy moments with it from time to time, but otherwise, is it worthy of an ultra rare? Yeah, I mean, I think you need it to be an ultra rare because you do get the insta down, but I don't know how much actual use you'll get out of it. So here we go. Alchemist Ring. A ring given to alchemists graduating from the London School of Medicine. It's a reminder of unrestrained ambition. Hitting a survivor with a lethal rush will instantly recharge all rush tokens. Honestly, this one is kind of nice. Like, if you hit somebody with your rush, like you've been bouncing and you whack someone, you do not have to wait for your tokens to recharge. You will actually just have all the tokens. I mean, after the cooldown of hitting someone, of course, all of your tokens will be ready and able to use. That's fairly decent. Honestly, like, especially once you get good at using his power to actually hit people, this is going to come in handy. Like, you're not gonna get a lot of use of it when you're just learning the Blight, and you want to get used to him running out of tokens and kind of, because you do kind of lose sight of stuff, and you kind of like drop down a little bit, not quite as much as the nurse, but you do look down and you shove a syringe in yourself to recharge, and then your tokens start building back up, and they don't take a ton of time, but if you are rolling and if you're able to use this well, this is a very strong add-on. Soul Chemical. A chemical squeeze from the pineal gland of a recently deceased survivor. During a rush, the moment where you enter the 16-meter radius around a survivor who's repairing or healing, you can trigger a tremendously difficult skill check for that survivor. Can activate once per survivor per rush. Does not trigger for a rush starting with 16 meters of the survivor. This is sort of interesting, but honestly, the likelihood that you're going to be that someone is not going to like just move away from the gen before that happens. I've never tried this one, honestly, just because it's going to give them a hard skill check if you happen to come within 16 meters of a survivor while they're on a gen while you're rushing. Now, on the other hand, this might happen more often than you realize, and you might get some missed skill checks out of it. But other than that, I mean, it's okay. It's interesting. But once again, the activation conditions are very specific, and that doesn't always make. I would like an add-on that gives me a benefit throughout the game, whether that's speeding something up or slowing someone down. And here, like, it's interesting, and I'm sure there might be some people that use it, but you're not going to get a lot of mileage out of this add-on. You just aren't. Let's see. Summoning Stone. Talbot uses stone to carve up what he believes his research into the opium den's walls. Hitting a survivor with a rush attack will call upon the entity to block pallets from being pulled down within a 16-meter radius of your location for 15 seconds. So Summoning Stone is very much like a Blood Favor, except for it allows you to do it with your rush as well. Now that's getting changed in the mid-chapter patch, so they are going to change this as well, so it is still usable. I do not remember what the change is going to be, but it will reflect Blood Favor's improvement in the mid-chapter patch. But it's not bad. Like I talked about earlier with Blood Favor, being able to block a pallet just by hitting someone, although this is specifically with the rush, and that's why they were going to have to adjust it, because Blood Favor will do that anyway. But being able to block a pallet from being pulled down could genuinely shorten up some chases, and that is very, very helpful. I am considering maybe goofing around with this, because I really, really am trying to play around with some new and different add-ons to kind of like get away from the super stall meta, but it also feels bad when you get away from the super stall meta because the gens evaporate and everybody dances out the door. But shortening up chases is important. If you can shorten up a chase and get someone on a hook quicker by 20 seconds, by 30 seconds, because that pallet never got dropped, you know what? You're putting more pressure on the map. Someone has to come off. Someone has to, go for the unhook. Like, so that can be a big thing. So I think Blood Favor and the Summoning Stone add-on are not bad, but he does have better. So we're gonna work on getting there. Vigo's Journal, the journal of a man who claims to have returned from the void, the knowledge within his practical applications. Gain the undetectable status while rushing. This is decent. Like, honestly, just straight decent. Honestly, wish it wasn't very rare, because if you don't have anything else to run, this is a decent add-on. You're undetectable while rushing. Now, I don't know what that means. They can't hear kind of your noises, but you're undetectable means that you don't have a terror radius, and that can be very helpful. Sneaking up and get close enough to people to start that chase. So decent. Have no complaints about it. I wouldn't mind if it was a green, honestly. Adrenal Vial, a hormone removed from an unwilling subject's adrenal glands. Although it provides a jolt of energy, it can fatigue its user. Tremendously reduces turn rate while rushing. Tremendously increases token regeneration rate. Increases the amount of available rush tokens by 2. Considerably increases the maximum look angle while rushing. So what this does is you do not necessarily, you're not able to turn so much. It's more of a straight line thing. You get 2 extra rush tokens, so you'll have 7. So you can do a lot of bing, 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 bing. And it considerably increases the maximum look angle while rushing. So this one sort of has a trade-off. This is a very good add-on, but the problem is that you've got to get used to playing it. Like, it makes him feel like he's playing very differently. Like, his rushes become much more straight-lined. You can still adjust a little bit, right? But now you've got 2 extra tokens, so you can bounce around and line up your hit with a survivor, and then it also considerably increases your maximum look angle while rushing, so you're able to flick more, and that's going to be very helpful. So this is a very, very neat add-on to play with, but I think that if you just played base Blight and haven't used this add-on, you're going to want to practice with this a little bit. It's a good add-on. It helps some of the things, but it also kind of hurts your ability to steer while you're rushing. And so once again, we've got a trade-off. It doesn't just straight improve the power, make it better. You got to kind of choose and see how you play. So decent add-on, well worth giving it a shot. Play with it a little bit and see if you like it. Blighted Crow, a dead crow that's been grotesquely mutilated by the Blight Serum, considerably increases rush speed for each consecutive rush. So every time you bounce off something, you get faster. Boom, faster, boom, faster, boom, faster, boom, faster. These are very good add-ons. Like, honestly, a lot of people really just rely on his speed add-ons because it allows you to catch up to people before they have all the time in the world to, get to a pallet or get to something else or turn left or turn right, like I talked about before. Speed on the Blight is very good. It increases your map pressure. You get to places faster, and this is kind of nice. Like, you bounce and you get into it, and then you just consistently speed up. Once again, if you're used to base Blight, this is something you're going to want to play with because you're going to start going very fast, and then learning to control it is important, or just being on top of it. But speed is good. Compound 21, a serum that's fatal to humans. It evokes beneficial qualities in those who are something more. When initiating a slam, reveal the aura of survivors within 8 meters of the collision location for 3 seconds. I've actually used this one often. It's kind of handy for seeing people. A lot of times I find with the Blight, if I am chasing them down, one of the best things that you can do against the Blight is stand behind something. Whether that's a big tree, whether that's a big rock, a lot of times they will just stand there, and I can see them with this. I can see them, and I can see if they're leaning one way or the other, whether I should, end my rush and just chase around the rock and hit them, or whether I can hit something else and then come back and then get them before they can move. It's tricky, but getting that extra vision and that 8 meters is decent, because you're going to be bumping into stuff all the time. So when you bump into something, if someone is 8 meters away from you, and sometimes you don't even know it, and then you'll see them, and then boom, there's a new chase. If someone is 8 meters away from you, 8 meters or less away from you, they will light up like a Christmas tree for 3 seconds. It's a good add-on. Is it the best? No, but I think that it can give you some good information while you're learning how to play. You get a real good idea of how the survivors are moving, kind of like when they're hiding behind something to avoid your next rush. A Rose Tonic, a mixture made with dried roses from the exceedingly rare New Moon Bouquet. Considerably increases slam duration. This is nice, especially when you are learning the Blight. If you do not have split-second reflexes, and learning the Blight is a little tricky because it can be disorientating. You bump into something, and then you've got to turn around and look to where you're going to go next before you hit the power button. What this does is gives you a little more time before you have to hit the power button. Otherwise, your power resets. Like you go out of your power, and then you stab yourself with your needle, and it results in some downtime, and it can mess up some chases, especially if someone did. If you're chasing someone and you hit something and they double back real quick and you thought they were going to be here, but they were actually over here, being able to look around for that extra little bit of time, and then launch your next attack can be handy. It's a decent set of training wheels for him that sooner or later, after you play him enough, you probably won't need anymore, but honestly, a decent, solid learning perk for the Blight. Umbra Salts, regular sea salt that is momentarily passed through the spirit world, altering its properties in the process. Moderately increases turn rate while rushing. So this gives you some more steering. This is like power steering for the Blight. It allows you to turn more while you are rushing. Does not affect your flick, that distance that we talked about here. No, where did we talk about it? Here? There. Maximum look angle. That's what we're looking at. That's his, flick to the side and hit someone. So this just affects your ability to steer in between bouncing. And that's not bad either. It gives you a little more flexibility. Is it the best thing you can use? No, but you know what? It can be handy too. If you find that you would like to be able to turn a little more, this is the add-on for you. It's green. You'll get it a bunch, and everything will be fine. A blighted rat. A rat that briefly returned to life when injected with the serum, becoming aggressive and uncontrollable. Moderately increases rush speed for each consecutive rush. So once again, we're talking about speed. So we have blighted crow, we have blighted rat. If you run these two together, as you bounce, you will get super fast. Every time you bounce, you will get faster. Now this, if you're not used to it, can be a lot to deal with. You'll overshoot stuff, you'll bump into things multiple times sometimes, and you'll waste it. But once you practice with it a little bit, it possibly could be probably his best add-on, because you could, this is a real decent combination, or one of these, perhaps with that, depending on what you're doing, or well, maybe not that, but even that considerably increases slam duration, gives you a little more time to pick your next shot that's going to be faster, and it's going to be faster and faster. But putting those two together, super fast. So speed is good on the Blight. You kind of want it, but you do have to practice with it to make it pay off. Canker Thorn, a sizable thorn snipped from a visceral canker. Ouch. It secretes a mild toxin, mildly increases recovery speed after a rush. This is not bad, but once again, it's a yellow, and we're down to the considerably, moderately, and slightly's. So not a big deal. Sample of the Blights, the Plague's vial, distilled and treated with a mixture of chemicals. Slightly increases your turn rate while rushing. So we have slightly, and then we have moderately. Gonna help you steer. Moderately increases slam duration. Honestly, this for a yellow, this is decent. It gives you moderately, which is, we don't know yet, and that's going to come with the mid-chapter patch, but it allows you a little more time to make your decision of where to rush next, or if to rush at all. And because someone might already be at something that rush isn't going to help you a lot with. So I mean, or behind a pallet, or they made shack, or whatever. But these are handy, especially when you're learning the Blight, because it could be, you don't want to just jump in and start knocking out speed add-ons, because you will probably not feel very great about it. Let's see. Shredded notes. The remnants of Talbot's notes, they still contain some valuable information within. Decreases the amount of available rush tokens by 1 and moderately increases token regeneration rate. You know what? This could have just added a rush token and it would have been fine. And I don't think anybody would have complained. Moderately increases token regeneration rate. So they come back a little faster, but you get 1 less. Like, it's kind of pointless. I don't understand. It's a thing. Displays a target location of slam. This is like the flannel for the nurse. Kind of gives you, a visual on if you are learning him and you are struggling. You could use this, but I don't think it's terribly necessary. Like, bouncing into something is pretty self-explanatory. But it does give you some idea and can help you in the beginning while you're learning the Blight. Automatically face the nearest survivor within 16 meters after a slam. Now, this is not terrible. Like, now, I'm not saying this is maybe what you should learn him with, and maybe it would just give you an idea. But if you are in a chase with somebody and you are using your power to catch up with them, if they are within 16 meters after a slam, you will automatically turn in their direction, and you do not have to turn at all. This is very, very interesting for a common. I have never used it, but I would certainly consider it if I was just getting a feel for the Blight. Because a lot of times where you lose chases is when you bounce and then you've got to re-find the person, right? You're looking around real quick before you launch into your next attack. So this is a very, very interesting add-on for being a common, and really it's kind of like a little bit of training wheels for the Blight. Is that something you're going to use after you get good at him? Not at all. But while you're learning how to play him, super fine. Slightly increases recovery speed after a rush. Sure. Moderately decreases movement speed while rushing. Gain 100 bonus blood points on rush score events. Placebo tablet. Once again, another, like, I don't even know what to call these. Like, most killers have one, and it's usually in their commons, where you get a negative effect or something doesn't work as well as it's supposed to, but you get a 100% bonus blood point score event on whatever that score is, and we don't know how much it scores. Oh well, you do during the game, and then you get 100% bonus to it, but once again, those are pretty worthless. Just use barbecue if you want extra blood points, honestly. So that's kind of an overlook, just an overview of the add-ons. And to just give you an idea what works, what doesn't, there are different ways to play the Blight. You might want to be more maneuverable, or you might want to be faster. Really are the two best ways to go. Neither one of the iridescents are mind-blowing, but they're okay. There's also some that are decent add-ons, but they have a very situational activation. So play around with it, but you're never going to go wrong with speed. You're never going to go wrong with maneuverability, and also if you're learning, you're not going to go wrong with the slam duration, which gives you more time to look around before the power drops off and initiate your slam, your next rush to get to a survivor. So that's kind of it for the add-ons. Nothing mind-blowing there, but there's some decent things. Go fast, hit stuff. In a nutshell, that's the Blight. We'll be right back with kind of our overview, and then we will allow you to run off on your merry way. So thanks for sticking with us. We'll be right back. And so here we are to the overview of the Blight. We're going to have a little gameplay up in the background while we chat about what our little ping pong ball does good, does bad, or does plain ugly. So here we are at Sanctum of Wrath. Lots of stuff to bounce off of here, sometimes too much, but just to watch the gameplay, and it'll unfold as we do. So what does the Blight do well? Map pressure. Well, I mean, he does do the catch-up thing very well too, but being able to run around the map at high speeds and push people off gens, so important. That's why when you see a Blight, he's probably going to be playing Rune and Undying, not just because Undying is his perk, but because you're pushing people off gens all the time if you are playing well. You want to always be moving, you want to always be using up your tokens, you always want to be finding a way to get down and visit somebody, and you're going to find people, and you're going to push them off gens, and you're going to get regression. Undying and Ruin are probably core to this killer, right? And that's pretty much the big thing right there, is that his map pressure is so good, especially after you get used to playing him and using him well. It's hard to. Sometimes it feels weird going back to a killer who just walks around, right? If you're playing killers like, and this is something that the killers who are very strong in this game have in common, whether it is intense map pressure, whether it is something like being able to blink through stuff, whether it is your strength in the one-on-one, like the spirit. See, look there, I tried to bounce but I could not, and then I ran out and then had to stab myself. So you can't bounce off everything. I mean, like, there's so much to bounce off of. Like, it's just once in a while it does feel like, oh, hey, I'm at a place and I really can't efficiently or accurately use my power. And I missed. But nonetheless, unfortunate. But this is what he does well, and this is why he's worth practicing, is getting down the times when you can actually use this power and when it is not worth using the power. See, like there, like I knew a guy was in there. There was no way for me to bounce in there really, outside of doing something nonsensical, but I chased him off and now Rune is ticking away nicely. So I'm getting regression on that gen, and that's why he works well with those perks. You're able to brush people off objectives fairly quickly. If you are constantly rushing, once again, you have a distance that you can rush, and being able to do that, and get good at it, knowing your distance, knowing when you need to slam against another object before your rush gives out, is a really core tenet of playing the Blight. And this is why you practice him. You practice him so you're fluid with it, so you have less downtime stabbing yourselves with your little serum pen and letting the survivor get away, or just get distance on you in a chase. This is where he shines, is running around real fast. Not that I'm doing it right now, but I saw someone that was back here and I am trying to track them down. I know someone is here. I heard them, I saw them. I am also keeping track of one of my totems, and there was that person. Like, I missed them completely. They were very sneaky, and that was all good. So we're going to come around. Are we gonna use our power? No. Like over here, this little graveyard of stones, just too much spawns around. I didn't even bother, and I heard her come back, and then so we take her down. So but getting around the map all the time, use up your charges anytime you're going. Like, I'm not giving a really good example of it in this game because that's not how the game is going right now, but you are able to just get everywhere. Like, see, I was trying to bounce off something and I missed, and I tried to hit the wall and I did not have enough of a rush. So these are the things you have to practice to become a good Blight. Knowing your distances, being able to go ahead and take advantage of that and get around the map quickly, and then you can work on using your rush to catch up with survivors, perhaps getting hits and downs. The problem is, once again, that is a very like out in the open kind of thing. You're not going to be able to use it a lot or terribly effectively at loops, and that is unfortunate. But it's sort of the trade-off for the map pressure that you have and your ability to catch up quickly with a survivor that's gotten some distance on you. In the end, I mean, like, that's kind of the Blight in a nutshell. Like, he just gets around very fast. He can catch up to survivors very fast. This is why he is and will be now the second strongest killer in the game after the changes to the Spirit go live. And that's why people use him. And I'm not sure what else to really inject there. But what you need to do, as with any killer that has a higher skill cap and is near the top of the food chain as far as killers go, like the Blight is, you need to put time into him. You need to practice the Blight, just like you need to put time into the nurse. Like, if you ever wanted to be a good spirit, you needed to put time into her to really just be able to read the sounds that survivors are making, right? So time is a big thing. Like, you've got to learn. Like, you can see, I mean, even just me playing here, like, there were problems with my rushes. I was missing the stuff. I wasn't going around. This was actually pretty huge. Following up, and they just ran out. They didn't Like I'm not here to tunnel people or make their lives miserable, but I mean, they were just running out in the middle of nowhere like a little caravan. If they would have just hid back there and healed, I probably wouldn't have even noticed. But that is not how it happened. And so now we've got most of the people down. I don't know how much longer I allow this to go, if I allow them to run out, or do I get all 4? I think I get all 4 in this one. But once again, also not a super strong team that we're playing against here. Not too coordinated. They're only down to 3 gens. Both Ruined and Dying are up. That is not super common up at the higher levels. So you're going to get some time, and you want to make the most of it as Blight. And getting around the map quick is what he does. Like, I think that he's fun to play. Like, when you first started playing Blight, if you've never played the Blight before, it is going to be frustrating. You are going to be like, how does anybody think this killer is any good? And then things will start happening, and then you will start judging your distances better, and then you know what, you'll start hitting some decent shots with your lethal rush, and actually start downing some people with it. And then it starts feeling pretty good. Like, I mean, it doesn't mean that every time that you hit your lethal rush, you're going to down or injure a survivor. Like, that's not what it is at all. You're also going to have to be good at knowing your loops and knowing what to do with them, right? I think, do we get her? No, we don't. I thought I did, but then I realized I didn't. But that's kind of the key. That's kind of the Blight in a nutshell. I mean, like, go fast, go far, do stuff, and that is what is going to win you games, right? And yeah, there just wasn't. She was just YOLOing for the last one. It was not the hardest game in the world. It wasn't the greatest showcase of the Blight either. But I highly encourage anybody that plays Killer, if you have kind of avoided the Blight, or if he gave you kind of a bad taste when you first started playing him, realize really where his strengths are. And it's his map pressure, and it's his catch up. You're pushing people off gens, and that is what you want. You're going to get some good regression out of Ruin as long as it stays up. And you have the speed to maybe even defend those totems a little bit if you really want to invest in that. Because you can recover back into the kind of the field of play fairly quickly because you are the Blight. Other than that, like, that's it. Like, play the Blight. Like, he's well worth your time, and he's going to pay off the better that you get with him, and that's what you want out of a killer. Ideally, you want somebody who, if you put the time into, you're going to become more skilled, and it's going to pay off. And that's what's important with Killer, and that's what sometimes we miss with a lot of the killers that have come out, and you don't get rewarded for your time invested. Like, you can play Bubba, for 1,000 hours, and you know what, you'll be a pretty good Bubba, but he still really does about the same thing as you did when you started playing him. Outside of, you could probably drive the chainsaw a little better, you don't bump into stuff as much, you don't tantrum as much, and that's great. Or you get the timing down in your brain, when to start revving up the chainsaw, things like that, and you're going to be a better Bubba. But Bubba's still going to cap out about here, whereas the Blight is somewhere up here because of the amount of map pressure that you can put on top of being able to use your power to help you pressure and down survivors. And so, in a nutshell, the Blight is good. Practice him, get out there. It's not going to feel good right away. Same thing like playing the Nurse. It doesn't feel good at all right away, but sooner or later it starts to click. Things start to feel better. Get in there, try different things, try different mixtures of add-ons. Use the slam duration one, use the speed up ones, use the ones that help you flick a little more, but doesn't, you can't turn as much. Play until you're comfortable with bouncing around the map with the Blight, because it's going to pay off, and you're going to have some decent success. It doesn't mean you'll win every game. That doesn't mean it might take 20-30 games before you even start to get comfortable with them. But I think it's worth it. And I can't say that for many of the killers that are on the roster. So if you haven't, pick up the Blight, get bouncing, and enjoy yourself in the fog. So once again, thank you guys so much for watching these. I am going to be doing every killer in the game, and it is going to be my love letter to DBD, as I say at the beginning of each video. Let me know what you like, what you don't like. Try to make this one a little shorter and punch on through so it's not over an hour. But there's a lot to cover and to really give you an idea of what the killer does, what add-ons are good, and where they fit in the game. So thanks for hanging out with me. This is OldManBronze signing off. Much love. We'll see you soon.